I'm Tom D'Amico, president of American Flags Express. I'm very proud to be sitting here today with Lieutenant Douglas Holt, who is a veteran of World War II and a pilot, a B17 pilot during that time. And he has written a book entitled Lucky Dog about his aviation experiences and the training that went on prior to becoming a B-17 pilot. Could you tell us a little bit about how this book came about?
As you probably know, a lot of people have been pressuring us World War II veterans to write up our stories, not to write a book, just write it up. So over 10 years ago, I started to work at this. I had a diary that I had kept of all my missions, and I used that as a starting point. I also had kept all my files that were in a cardboard box, and as I wrote the story, more and more of it came back. I also decided to do some research to add parts of the story I was not aware of. The only thing we knew of casualties is those that were happening to the crews on our base. We did not realize how many airplanes were being lost at other. It's a story that starts from the day I enlisted until the day I got discharged, and all the different things that happened to typical individual joining the Air Force in 1943. However, I was only 18. I was only 5'4" and 110 pounds, so I had difficulty getting in. A doctor, in fact, changed the weight to get me in. Also, I went directly into cadets, no college training of any nature whatsoever. So 9 months I had my wings in commission.
And you had no previous aviation experience before that?
I had never even sat in an airplane when I went in. But in the story I tried to tell, not quite day by day, but quite in detail of everything that happened to me, some good, some bad, through that period of just 2.5 years.
How many people actually flew 35 missions that you know of?
Well, we were probably one of the very first crews to finish 35 missions. We started our first mission on July 16th, and we always kidded that that day was the day they changed from 30 to 35, so we had to do 5 extra. So all the crews from that point on that had not started their first mission under the 30 had to fly 35.
And what was the average number of missions that were actually capable, or people were capable of flying? Wasn't it closer to 15 at that point?
Well, the average missions, I think it's what you're really referring to. The average missions were down around that level. Too many crews went down on the first mission or their second or their third, so that the average was obviously less than 35.
So you were probably, you got the experience, you were fortunate enough to get the experience, and then use that experience to make it to 35, which is pretty incredible.
Well, experience and a lot of luck.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason my book is named Lucky Dog, because that was the airplane we were assigned for the majority of missions, had the word Lucky Dog on the nose. But obviously we were very lucky to have finished.
And you did have some close calls. You have the shrapnel that, maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this piece of shrapnel is the only souvenir I really kept. It's this very small piece of flak, but it entered the airplane somewhere and hit me right between the eyes on the goggles and the oxygen mask and slammed my head back. But simultaneously, pieces were flying all over the inside of the airplane. The other pilot got hit on the crazy bone, and the cockpit floor was covered with red, which his reaction was that his leg had been shot off, and he yelled for me to fly the airplane. It turned out it just hit his crazy bone, and his leg had not been shot off. So he took control then again. But that was our worst mission, and it was on 9/11, but in 1944, and it was over Mersburg, and that piece of that shell went off right in front of our nose and set number 1 engine on fire. Number 2 and 3 were damaged. Pieces came through and broke the plexiglass nose. The navigational equipment, radio equipment in the nose caught fire. The radio equipment in the radio room caught fire. The electrical system was out, so all of the turrets didn't work. With the electrical out, all the electric suits went out, so everybody was freezing.
And what altitude were you at?
We were flying about 30,000 feet, right over the target. The one I recall was when I took control, I screamed for everybody to shut up, get the fires out. That I remember vividly. That was the most important thing. I got the number 1 engine fuel pump shut off, which then put the fire out on number 1. But we immediately drifted back out of formation, and there was when we attacked Morrisburg, that brought out the German fighters, and there were about 400 trying to attack from above, but we had the P-51s with us at that time, and they were having a big battle royal. Well, as we dropped out of the formation, I got the radio operator to get the ball turret gunner out of his turret. The tail gunner had problems, and the waist gunner was sent back to help him out. But then we were concerned, now we're all by ourselves, and suddenly we saw 2 little fighters start coming down at us, 2 Me-109s, and we figured we're finished because we have no real defense for them. The only thing we could do was try to crank the turrets around. However, as these 2 fighters came down, they split apart and did something strange. One went off to the left, one went off to the right, and they started down in a curving pass. Now, all of a sudden, they morphed into P-51s. Now, I can tell you, they were 109s in our minds until they got close enough we saw what they were. Mm-hmm. They tacked onto our wings, and they escorted us back to the front line. We managed to make it back to the base with no brakes, and we had to crank the gear down, and we really only had 1 engine running with full power.
So the red fluid that was on the floor that the pilot originally thought was blood was actually brake fluid.
Was brake fluid. That was our worst mission, but on our second mission that we flew, we caught fire. We came back all alone, made it okay. We had other situations where shells came through the controls on the elevator and stabilizer on one side, shot us straight up into the formation and fell down through. We fortunately missed any mid-air collisions with any of them, got control. We had another one where a shell came through the bomb bay when the bomb bay doors were open, missed the bombs but tore through the structure and went out the top of the airplane before it exploded. We also took part in the invasion of Holland on that story later written, A Bridge Too Far, and we bombed the emplacements where the troops were going to parachute in.
Mm-hmm. Well, all of this is covered in the book, and much more. Read a lot of military books, a lot of World War II books, but this book is quite different and really gives you a new perspective on what actually happened inside the cockpits of these B-17s. It was an honor to meet you, and I think the book is going to be a great success on our website, and it's available at AmericanFlagsExpress.com.
Thank you very much, Tom.
My pleasure.